In the early 1990s, the video game market was dominated by Sega and Nintendo with their 16-bit consoles. Atari were desperately trying to claw some of the market share back with their ultimately ill-fated Lynx and Jaguar projects, and waiting in the wings was Sony, who was still smarting from their dealings with Nintendo. Unbeknownst to all of these initially, Trip Hawkins, founder of Electronic Arts, was busy setting up the 3DO company. The 3DO company ultimately only released one piece of hardware, the 3DO, eponymously named after the company. Now, the 3DO was released in 1994 as the 16-bit market reached its saturation point. Unfortunately for Trip Hawkins, his incredibly powerful multimedia system based on a 32-bit ARM CPU and utilising the latest in CD-ROM technology was massively overpriced. The reason for this? Rather than produce their own hardware, 3DO instead chose to license their hardware design out to different manufacturers such as Panasonic, LG, who were known as Gold Star at the time, and Sanyo. This release pattern meant that the hardware initially cost almost $700 or £700, and ultimately this was too much for the market to bear. But is the 3DO really that bad a machine, or should it have been given a chance had the price come down somewhat? Well, let's have a look at some games and see what we all think of them. Here is the 3DO Interactive Multimedia Player. Okay, first up is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Slayer, which is sort of a technical showpiece for the 3DO system with its textured 3D dungeons and first-person perspective gameplay, and an excellent soundtrack. The next game on my list to show you is Escape from Monster Manor, another first-person perspective game which plays similar to Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, although it doesn't quite look as pretty. Again, the audio is the thing that really enhances this game. And here we have the 3DO version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which was quite possibly the best version of the game released at the time. It was as close to arcade perfect as you could hope for, and much like the Mega Drive release a couple of years previously, came with a special dedicated 6-button control pad. Electronic Arts were massive supporters of the 3DO system, releasing a huge number of games for it compared to other publishers, and this is one of their finest moments, the first entry in the Need for Speed franchise. Unlike other home races at the time, this featured a fully 3D texture map world to race in and was somewhat of a revelation to gamers. And the final game I'm going to show some footage from here is Rash, which many people would consider to be the 3DO's killer app. This was a brilliant updating of the 16-bit game, featuring some lovely digitised sprite work overlaid onto a three-dimensional texture map world. It also came with an incredibly good, although now somewhat dated, grunge soundtrack. And there you have the 3DO. I've recently received my own one of these, and I have to say I do feel it was a much underrated machine. The hardware was capable, the games were good, the biggest problem was the price. I myself only knew one person who owned one, and he was incredibly lucky when it came to this fact. Retailing for £600 or £700 when it came out in the UK, this was just completely unattainable for the majority of gamers, who by this point were quite happily paying $99.99 for a Sega Mega Drive or $129.99 for a Super Nintendo. Yes, the Mega Drive got more expensive if you decided to go down the Mega CD route to join the new CD-ROM revolution, but even so, you were still looking at half the outlay of a 3DO, and for many people, that was the killer. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little look at the 3DO and some of its games. I will be doing some follow-up videos to this. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below telling me what you did like. If you didn't like the video, add a comment. Let me know why. And all I can say is, thank you for watching. This is Learner Draw. This is 8/1632-bit, and I will see you next time.